The espresso machine hissed like a serpent, drowning out everything except the pounding of Elena Romano's heart. Through the cafe window, 3 black Mercedes SUVs rolled to a stop, flanking the entrance with military precision. She didn't need to see the license plates to know. The Castellano family had found her. But that wasn't the part that made her hands shake as she wiped down the counter. The part that terrified her, the part that kept her awake for 73 nights in a row, was that Dante Castellano, the man stepping out of the center vehicle, the heir to the city's most powerful crime family, had no idea who she really was. No idea her last name wasn't Monroe. No idea her family had been destroyed by his. No idea that the woman he'd been courting for 8 months, the barista who made his espresso exactly how he liked it, double shot, no sugar, a woman he'd just proposed to last night, was the daughter of the man his father had ordered killed. The bell above the door chimed. Dante walked in, and despite everything, despite the revenge her brothers had been planning in the shadows, despite the blood debt that hung between their families like a guillotine, Elena's breath still caught. He was devastating. 6'3" of controlled power, moving like violence wrapped in Armani. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved by Michelangelo if the artist had been trying to capture predator and protector in the same expression. Those eyes, deep brown, almost black, found hers immediately. "Buongiorno, Bella," he said, his voice doing that thing it always did, turning her insides to liquid heat. "Your usual," she managed, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Always." He smiled, and God help her, she felt it everywhere. But then his phone buzzed. His expression shifted, hardening into something unreadable. He glanced at the screen, then back at her, and for the first time in 8 months, Elena saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Suspicion. "Actually," Dante said slowly, pocketing his phone. "We need to talk. About your family. Your real family." The espresso cup slipped from Elena's grip, shattering on the tile floor like her carefully constructed life. Because the text message Dante had just received contained 3 words that changed everything: her father's alive. 8 months earlier. Elena had been wiping down the same counter, in the same cafe, living the same lie, when Dante Castellano first walked through the door. She'd recognized him instantly. 6 years of studying her enemy had burned his face into her memory. Dante Castellano. 28 years old. Harvard-educated. Former Marine. Heir to the Castellano Empire. And the son of the man who destroyed her family. Her brother Marco's voice echoed in her head from their last meeting in that basement apartment in Red Hook: "Get close to him. Make him trust you. Make him love you. And when he's vulnerable, when he's completely exposed, we'll take everything from them the way they took everything from us." Revenge. That's what this was about. That's what the last 6 years had been about. Since the night her father, Vincent Romano, supposedly died in a warehouse fire that was ruled accidental but everyone knew better. The Castellanos had ordered it. Dante's father, Alessandro, had given the command. And Dante, whether he'd pulled the trigger or not, carried the guilt by blood. So Elena had changed her name to Elena Monroe, buried her Italian accent under layers of generic American speech, and gotten a job at the cafe Dante frequented. She'd waited. Watched. Prepared. What she hadn't prepared for was the man himself. Double espresso, he'd ordered that first day, his voice distracted, barely looking at her. Coming up. She'd made it perfectly. Slid it across the counter. Waited for him to taste it, to leave, to be just another step in the plan. But he'd looked up after that first sip, really looked at her, and something in his expression had shifted. "You're new," he'd said. 3 weeks. "You make a good espresso." "Thank you." He'd studied her for another moment, his eyes cataloging details in a way that made her aware he was dangerous for reasons that had nothing to do with his family name. "I'm Dante," he'd said, extending his hand. Elena had hesitated. This was it. The beginning of the con. The first step toward destroying him. She'd taken his hand. Elena. His grip had been firm, warm, and the contact had sent an unexpected jolt through her system that she'd immediately dismissed as adrenaline. Elena, he'd repeated, like he was testing the weight of it. I'll be back tomorrow. And he had been. And the next day. And the day after that. Within 2 weeks, he'd started timing his visits for her shifts. Within a month, he'd asked her to dinner. Within 3 months, she'd realized the plan was working perfectly. What she hadn't realized, what she'd refused to acknowledge until it was too late, was that somewhere between the manufactured smiles and the scripted conversations, between learning his coffee order and memorizing his schedule, she'd made a catastrophic mistake. She'd started to actually care about him. Dante Castellano wasn't supposed to be kind. He wasn't supposed to notice when she was tired and insist she take a break. He wasn't supposed to ask about her day, really ask, and then actually listen to the answer. He wasn't supposed to tip $100 on a $5 coffee and tell her to keep it because you work too hard. He definitely wasn't supposed to be there the night 3 drunk guys cornered her in the alley after closing, his arrival so perfectly timed it felt like Providence, his handling of the situation so brutal and efficient that they'd scattered like rats. You okay? He'd asked afterward, his hands gentle as he checked her for injuries, his eyes blazing with protective fury. How did you know I was here? I always know where you are. He'd said it simply, like it was obvious. Like watching over her was as natural as breathing. And that's when Elena had felt the first crack in her resolve. Because the man she was supposed to hate, the man she was supposed to destroy, had just revealed something that should have terrified her but instead made her feel safer than she'd felt in 6 years. He was protecting her. The enemy was protecting her. Tell me about your family, Dante had asked one night over dinner at a small Italian restaurant he'd rented out entirely so they could eat without interruption. Elena's heart had hammered against her ribs. This was the danger zone. The place where the lie could unravel. There's not much to tell, she'd said carefully. My parents died when I was young. I was raised by my aunt in Boston. Pretty standard stuff. It was the cover story she and Marco had crafted. Simple. Verifiable if anyone dug, but shallow enough that there wasn't much to find. Dante had studied her over his wine glass, those dark eyes seeing too much. You're lying. Her blood had turned to ice. Excuse me. Not about the facts, maybe. But about the feeling. He'd set down his glass, leaning forward. When you talk about your family, there's pain there. Real pain. The kind that comes from loss you haven't processed. He'd reached across the table, taking her hand. I know because I see it in the mirror every day. And then Dante had done something that had completely shattered Elena's carefully constructed walls. He'd told her the truth. My father, he'd said quietly, is not a good man. He's built an empire on violence and fear. And for years, I was supposed to follow in his footsteps. I was trained for it. Educated for it. Groomed to take over the family business. His jaw had clenched. But I don't want it. I don't want to be him. I want something different. Something clean. Elena had stared at him, her mind reeling. Then why stay? Because family is everything in my world. Because walking away means war. Because my mother, my sister, my grandfather, they're all part of this, and leaving means abandoning them to whatever chaos follows. He'd squeezed her hand. But with you, Elena, I feel like maybe there's a way out. Maybe there's a life where I'm not defined by my last name. And in that moment, Elena had realized the horrible truth. She'd fallen in love with him. The man she was supposed to destroy. The son of her father's murderer. She'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love. We have a problem, Marco had said 2 weeks ago, his voice tight over the phone. Elena had been at Dante's penthouse, watching him sleep, her hand resting on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. What kind of problem? The kind where our entire plan is built on a lie. She'd slipped out of bed, moving to the balcony so her voice wouldn't wake Dante. Explain. Dad. Marco's voice had cracked on the word. Vincent Romano. Our father. Marco, Dad's been dead for 6 years. We were at the funeral. The body in that casket wasn't his. The world had tilted on its axis. What? I found him, Elena. He's alive. He's been in hiding this whole time. And he's ready to come back. Elena's mind had spun. Why? Why fake his death? Why hide? Because Alessandro Castellano didn't just want him dead. He wanted everything. The territories, the connections, the legacy. Dad knew he couldn't win a direct war, so he disappeared. Made them think they'd won. Marco's voice had turned cold. And now, with you positioned right next to Dante, with access to the family's inner circle, Dad says it's time. Time to take back everything they stole. Marco, I can't, you can and you will. His tone had left no room for argument. This is what we've been working toward. This is justice. This is revenge, Elena had whispered. They're the same thing. But they weren't. Elena knew that now. Revenge was poison. It destroyed everything it touched. And she was already dying from it. Last night, Dante had proposed. They'd been on his yacht, anchored in the harbor, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. I know this is fast, he'd said, dropping to one knee, a platinum ring catching the moonlight. I know we've only known each other 8 months. But Elena, I've lived 28 years feeling like I was playing a role in someone else's story. With you, for the first time, I feel like myself. He'd looked up at her, vulnerability written across every line of his face. Marry me. Walk away from this world with me. We'll start over somewhere new. Just us. No family obligations. No past. Just a future. Elena's heart had shattered and soared simultaneously. Because he was offering her everything she'd ever wanted. And it was built on the foundation of the biggest lie she'd ever told. Yes, she'd whispered, because in that moment, she'd meant it. She'd deal with Marco. With her father. With the revenge plan. But she wouldn't lose Dante. She couldn't. Now, standing in the cafe with broken ceramic at her feet and Dante's suspicious eyes locked on hers, Elena realized the choice had been made for her. Her father's alive, Dante repeated, showing her his phone. Vincent Romano. Your father. There was no point in denying it. The message included a photo. Her father, alive, standing outside Marco's apartment. Dante, don't. His voice was ice. Don't lie to me anymore. Just tell me the truth. All of it. So she did. She told him about the warehouse fire. About the years of planning. About Marco's revenge scheme. About infiltrating his life with the explicit purpose of destroying him. And then she told him the hardest truth of all. But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you. Really. Completely. And I don't know how to make you believe that, but it's true. Dante stood silent, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. Do you know what my father did to yours? He ordered him killed. No. Dante's jaw clenched. He didn't. Your father came to mind 6 years ago. Said he wanted out of the life. Asked for help disappearing. And my father helped him. Elena's world tilted again. What? The warehouse fire. That was staged. Vincent wanted his enemies to think he was dead so he could finally be free. My father gave him that freedom. Dante pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. And 2 months ago, Vincent reached out to my father again. Said he wanted to come back. Reclaim his territory. Start a war. He looked up at her. My father refused. Said the past was the past. That Vincent had been given his peace, and he should keep it. That can't be true. Marco said, Marco is planning to assassinate my entire family, Dante said flatly. We've had surveillance on him for 3 weeks. He's recruited an army. And he was using you to get close enough to do it. Elena's knees buckled. Dante caught her, his arms strong and familiar and everything she'd been trying to protect. I didn't know, she gasped. I swear I didn't know any of that. Marco told me Alessandro killed our father. That we were avenging him. Your brother lied to you. Dante's voice softened slightly. And I need to know. Right now. Where your loyalty is. Elena looked up at him, this man she'd planned to destroy and ended up loving, and made her choice. I'm with you. What happened over the next 72 hours would be talked about in whispers for decades. Vincent Romano emerged from hiding, confirming Dante's story. He'd wanted peace, not war. Alessandro Castellano had given it to him. But Marco, consumed by 6 years of misdirected rage, had twisted the truth. Built an army on lies. And when Vincent refused to support the revenge plan, Marco had threatened his own father. You're either with me or against me, Marco had snarled in a confrontation Elena witnessed via video feed from Dante's security team. Then I'm against you, Vincent had said quietly. Because what you're planning isn't justice. It's murder. The night Marco and his recruited soldiers moved against the Castellano estate, they found not an unprepared family, but a coordinated defense. Because Elena had given Dante everything. Names, locations, timelines, plans. She'd chosen love over blood. And when the dust settled, Marco was in custody. His army scattered. And Vincent Romano stood in Alessandro Castellano's study, 2 old men who'd once been enemies, now bound by the mutual goal of stopping the next generation from making the same mistakes. Your daughter saved my family, Alessandro said simply. Vincent looked at Elena, who stood next to Dante, their hands intertwined. She's braver than I ever was, Vincent said quietly. I ran from my life. She stood and fought for what was right. He extended his hand to Dante. Take care of her. With my life, Dante promised. 6 months later, Elena stood in a small chapel in Tuscany, wearing white, her father walking her down the aisle toward a man who'd started as her target and ended as her salvation. Dante's family filled one side of the church. Hers filled the other. Former enemies, now united. When she reached him, Dante took her hands, his eyes bright with emotion. I forgive you, he whispered. I never asked you to, she whispered back. I know. That's why I do. The priest began the ceremony, but Elena barely heard it. She was too focused on the man in front of her, the one who'd seen her at her worst, known her betrayal, and chosen her anyway. I do, she said when the moment came. I do, Dante echoed. And when he kissed her, it tasted like redemption. 3 years later. Elena unlocked the door to the cafe, now fully hers, the name changed from Corner Coffee to New Beginnings. Dante was already inside, setting up the espresso machine with the ease of practice. Double shot, no sugar, she asked, smiling. Always, he replied, pulling her in for a kiss. Their daughter, Isabella, 18 months old, banged on her high chair in the corner, demanding breakfast with the imperious attitude of someone who'd inherited both her father's intensity and her mother's stubbornness. She's got your eyes, Elena said, feeding Isabella some fruit. She's got your fire, Dante countered. The bell above the door chimed. Vincent walked in, followed by Alessandro, the 2 men now business partners in legitimate enterprises, their violent pasts finally laid to rest. No. Isabella shrieked, reaching for both grandfathers simultaneously. Elena watched as her father and her father-in-law competed for Isabella's attention, their laughter filling the small space, and marveled at the impossible reality. She'd walked into this cafe 3.5 years ago with revenge in her heart. She was walking out every day now with love in her hands. Regrets? Dante asked quietly, reading her expression. Elena looked at him. At their daughter. At their families, blended and healed. Not even one. Because here's the truth that took her years to learn: revenge is a poison that destroys the vessel that carries it. It consumes from the inside out, leaving nothing but ash. But love? Love is the only thing powerful enough to turn enemies into family. Hate into hope. Lies into truth. She'd started this journey as Elena Romano, daughter of a supposedly murdered crime boss, determined to destroy the Castellano family. She'd ended it as Elena Castellano, wife, mother, bridge between two worlds. The revenge her brother had craved would have left everyone dead or broken. The love she'd chosen had given everyone life. And as Dante pulled her close, his arms wrapped around her while Isabella laughed and their fathers argued about whose turn it was to hold her, Elena understood the final, most important truth: real power isn't in taking revenge. Real power is in having every reason to seek it, every justification to pursue it, every right to demand it, and choosing mercy instead. Choosing love instead. Choosing life instead. That's what separates the strong from the weak. That's what defines true courage. Not the willingness to fight, but the strength to forgive. Narrator's final words: you know what gets me about this story? It's not the mafia drama. It's not the romance. It's not even the shocking reveals. It's the choice. Elena had every reason to hate Dante. Every justification. Blood debt. Family honor. 6 years of believing he was the enemy. But she chose to see past the names, past the history, past the hate. She chose to see the man. And that's the lesson here, brothers. That's what this story is really about. How many of us are carrying around revenge we think we're owed? How many of us are holding grudges that are poisoning us from the inside? How many of us are so focused on what was taken from us that we can't see what's being offered? Elena could have destroyed Dante. Could have torn down his entire family. Could have had her revenge. But she would have lost everything that mattered in the process. Including herself. Real strength isn't in how hard you can hit back. It's in knowing when not to throw the punch at all. Real power isn't in taking what's yours. It's in building something better than what was stolen. Real victory isn't in crushing your enemies. It's in turning them into family. That's the kind of man Dante became. The kind who forgave betrayal because he understood the bigger picture. That's the kind of woman Elena grew into. The kind who chose love over loyalty to lies. And that's the kind of person you can be too. Whatever revenge you're carrying, whatever grudge you're holding, whatever past you're clinging to, ask yourself this: is it making you stronger? Or is it making you smaller? Is it building your future? Or is it trapping you in your past? Is it giving you peace? Or is it stealing your joy? Because at the end of the day, you get to choose. Revenge or redemption. Hate or healing. Destruction or love. Elena chose love. And it gave her everything revenge never could. A family. A future. A life worth living. What are you going to choose?